they've been in urban, suburban, and rural communities, and involving quite a large number of students. Generally, there's in a mediation about 20 students will be involved in the actual mediation. That's an average, but primarily those disputes have revolved around race issues. There's been a couple involving homophobia, but most of them involved issues of race. So kids were lining up along racial lines. We've been very, very successful with that. I just personally completed one week before last. It's thoroughly exhausting, but when you go back to the school and you talk to the kids and they say, "This is great, I'm so glad we had an opportunity to do this and to resolve our issues," because at that point they often don't have anywhere to turn, or they don't feel they have anywhere to turn, and they're really worried they're going to have a fight. And so it offers them a confidential setting to resolve things, and the kids are all doing well, and so you always feel like it's worth it. So those are some good things that are happening in the state right now. Thank you.
I'm Ellen Connerton, speaking about efforts at the Department of Public Health. Can everybody hear me? I'm going to start by sort of giving an overview of our philosophy of youth and youth violence. We seek to instill good health, coping skills, and hope for the future in all youth in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and certainly preventing violence deals with all of those issues. Violence prevention is integrated into the full range of efforts at the Department of Public Health. It's not just set in one department. And just to talk about data for a minute, for adolescents, particularly those 15 to 24, homicide and suicide are the second and third leading causes of death, respectively. The only thing that's more than them is motor vehicles, and of course, if you combine homicide and suicide deaths into one category of violence, they exceed motor vehicle-related deaths. And in addition, injuries resulting from suicide attempts and assaults exceed all other forms of injuries to adolescents. So even if it doesn't result in a fatality, it certainly is an issue for healthcare. Resources are much more devoted to preventing interpersonal violence than to preventing self-inflicted violence or suicide. Yet suicide in Massachusetts and actually throughout the country is a much more prevalent problem. In fact, suicides in Massachusetts have outnumbered homicide by more than 2 to 1 for over 150 years. So that's been very consistent. There's been a lot about school violence in the past couple of years, most notably the incident at Columbine High in Colorado. But in fact, in Massachusetts and elsewhere, schools are just about the safest place in the community for a young person to be. Less than 6% of reported violent incidents among youth happened in schools last year. The community is much more dangerous, but even more so, the family is a place of risk for most kids. They witness relationship violence among their parents, domestic violence between the mother and father. They're often victims of child abuse. And there's the risk of just witnessing the violence among other family members. I want to go over a few aspects that characterize adolescence, which make it a particularly vulnerable period for violence, but also for some of the prevention strategies that we look at. Adolescents are much more likely to focus on their peers and to seek information and confide in peers than they are to look towards adults. And that's one of the reasons why the peer mediation programs are such a success, because at that stage of development, they're not going to really want a teacher or a parent to intervene on their behalf. They much more trust people at their same stage of development. But they still very much need their families, and one of the things they need their families to do is to trust them and to let them learn from their own experience and to bounce ideas off of without necessarily prescribing how they should handle the situation. Adolescence is also characterized by incredible impulsivity and by a sense of taking everything very seriously. To an adolescent, a one-week romantic relationship can be a very serious relationship. From my stage of life, that's laughable. But to them, they take it very seriously. So if a relationship of a short duration ends, to them that's a serious loss, and they can have a lot of anger and grief about that. It's also characterized by impulsivity. Most of us, I don't think there's any person in this room who has never had a violent impulse, but adolescents are much more likely to act on them because it's a stage of life that they don't think so much. They get an impulse and they act on it. And that's true whether it's an act of aggression against another person or self-harm against themselves. And I think it's important to expand our definition of harassment and bullying and the sort of behaviors that you were describing, Sandra, in terms of hate-related activities against people who are just different. It's a time where cliques are a dominant part of school life often, and while not all schools experience that, and young people can also be wonderfully compassionate, there are cases when some discriminating behaviors really result in hurt feelings, even if it's not actual acts of violence. So it's important to bear that in mind. Some of the risk factors for violence, I think it's always important to keep these in mind. Universal risk factor is anger. Raise your hand in this room if you've never been angry. I don't see any hands. You know, everybody gets angry at one time or another, and those feelings are normal and, in fact, quite healthy. What you do with the anger, however, can get you into trouble, and that can lead to accidents. Someone else or against yourself. Access to weapons and other lethal means is also a major risk factor for violence. Now, you know, you don't have to have a gun to have violence. The NRA will be the first to tell you that. But the fact is, it's a lot harder to do damage to someone with your fist than it is with a firearm, or damage to somebody else. And speaking of self-injury, it's not just guns that can hurt you. Access to medication, all kinds of things can lead to self-injury. Alcohol is a risk factor for violence. It's been documented that a lot of cases of domestic violence that result in emergency room treatment involve alcohol in part of either the aggressor or the victim. And certainly that's true for youth as well. Drugs pose special risk factors, and in this case that's in two categories, because there are the risks of using drugs and how they might decrease your inhibitions, increase your impulsivity, make you more likely to be a victim or a perpetrator depending on the substance that you're using. And also that selling drugs, which happens in nice suburban communities too, I'm afraid, puts you at special risk of violence because it's illegal activity. The police don't protect it, which requires people involved in drug trade to protect themselves, which usually means weapons. Oppression and inequity, and these are major risk factors for violence. When we have economic inequity, when we have discrimination of people based on their faith, their national origin, the color of skin, their sexual orientation, that can result in really tragic forms of violence. And I think it's important to remember hopelessness and isolation. Someone who has a lot of hope for a good future, or who feels hopeless about the future, it doesn't feel they have much to lose. And if they feel very isolated and they have a lack of connections, they're more likely to turn on themselves or on someone else. So what are protective factors? Because it's really not helpful to understand risk factors unless you know what helps keep kids safe. One of the things that's come up in research in recent years is a sense of school connectedness, and I think our school personnel can speak to that. Schools that really offer kids a way to stay connected, not just in the classroom, but in the after-school hours, really have an advantage, and I've just been impressed listening. It's, you know, these kids have been rehearsing for band practice till about 5 minutes ago, and that's a great way to stay connected to your school, all those after-school activities. Having strong attachments to other people, and for adolescents, a lot of that includes peers. It also includes families and teachers and other people. In fact, the most important thing is a relationship with a caring adult that you can trust. Kids need to know if they have a problem, if there's someone that they can go to, and unfortunately, adolescents don't always get a lot of respect from the adults in their circle, so they might have a problem and seek someone to confide in who either doesn't believe them or doesn't take their feelings or concerns seriously. I try to tell kids when that happens, keep telling a grown-up until someone helps you, but grown-ups do fail children in that regard sometimes. And another protective factor, the most important ones, are emotional. If you have hope, if you have goals that you believe you can achieve, you have things you set your sights on, that helps you look towards the future and do what you need to do to protect yourself and make that happen. So what does DPH do about all this? Well, we have a number of initiatives, some based in schools and some based in communities. And not all of them are strictly violence prevention, but most of them incorporate violence into the other work that they do. We have our Enhanced School Health Services program, and these strengthen existing school health services and implement comprehensive health education for kids. They establish multidisciplinary teams in schools to identify students with health risks and to promote linkages to other community service agencies. We have a special range of programs for our gay and lesbian youth support services, and this is something, a collaboration with the Governor's Commission on Gay and Lesbian Youth, to support projects designed to decrease youth suicide and violence against them and other problems faced by young gays and lesbians in school and in their families. This is a group really particularly at risk, and certainly our youth risk behavior survey data has supported that they're more likely to be victims of violence and to attempt violence against themselves. We support a wonderful intervention out of the Department of Public Health called Mentors in Violence Prevention. And this is a program that teaches gender violence prevention to usually groups of peer leaders, most often athletes in schools around the state. And it's administered by the Northeastern University Center for the Study of Sport and Society. They train peer leaders to teach other youth to be empowered bystanders when confronted with aspects of gender violence. We have our school-based health centers, and these are comprehensive primary care programs located in elementary, middle, and high schools, and they're linked to community-based health services, and they seek, among other things, to work on violence prevention. Something I think some of you are familiar with is Violence Prevention Month. It's in May of each year, and this is a calendar of events that occur all through the month of May. And they really are events that reflect activities that happen all year long, but in May we particularly highlight the violence prevention work that's done in schools and communities, and encourage schools to incorporate activities that support violence prevention. Of course, in recent years we're competing with MCAS, which is quite a challenge, but we're doing our best. And we have a curriculum, or I like to say a framework called Words Not Weapons, which has been in existence for a few years. This is one of many collaborations we have with the Massachusetts Department of Education, and it's a community and school initiative to reduce the use of weapon violence and weapons among high school students, and to reduce violence in schools through a peer leadership model. And we still have a curriculum on that available. Some of our other programs that are more community-based include Adolescent Batterers Intervention. This is a criminal justice program that takes court-referred or DSS-referred or self-referred teens who are perpetrators of partner violence against their teenage partners, and helps to promote the cessation of violence and maintenance of victim safety. We have a wonderful set of coalitions around the state called the Challenge Fund Teen Pregnancy Prevention Program. Now, obviously, the overall goal of this program is to reduce and prevent teen pregnancies, but it does that by encouraging youth to have a lot of hope for the future and different things, to set goals and find that there are things that they want to do besides become parents at a young age, and that has real effects towards preventing violence. I'm fortunate to have been to this community before, working with some of our community health network areas. I know there are some people here tonight who participated in that, and one of the Chinnas working with this community has focused on teen dating violence, and many Chinnas throughout the state deal with other aspects of partner violence or other types of violence. Let's see, our comprehensive sexual assault prevention and survivor services, which are sometimes known as rape crisis centers, are a good set of programs for schools to know about, because they provide, in addition to providing immediate intervention services and ongoing support when someone is a survivor of a sexual assault, or for their family and other loved ones, they provide community and professional education on sexual assault and intervention. So they're available to come out, they get some funding to come out to schools and other community agencies to do an education piece if that's something that interests your schools. Our Massachusetts Peer Institute, which is run out of the Massachusetts Prevention Centers, is a really wonderful event that brings together peer leaders from all over the state once a year for a conference at a college, usually in August, and has them address all kinds of aspects of health that they think are important. And this year, in a self-directed day of activities, out of 15 health topics that you've identified, 9 were related to violence, and they developed plans to take back to their communities to continue to address prevention of violence. An initiative that I work very closely with is the Massachusetts Violence Prevention Task Force, which supports and develops effective violence prevention initiatives by providing leadership and advocacy, by promoting collaborations among organizations, developing and recommending policy, and promoting research and evaluation. And a really important thing to know about the Mass Violence Prevention Task Force is they provide grants to community-based coalitions to do violence prevention. We've just been going through a round of reviewing applications for this year, but that comes up on an annual basis, so it's a good thing for people to be aware of. A lot of the programs administered through our Bureau of Substance Abuse Services deal with violence in addition to substance abuse issues, and are certainly to be recommended. And lastly, we have a youth criminal justice collaborative problem, which is a sort of alternative to court involvement for a lot of juvenile offenders, which seeks to do some, I guess you'd say, tertiary violence prevention, kids who are already a little bit involved with some difficulties. So those are some of the programs we do with the Department of Public Health.
Helen mentioned that many programs at the state level are in competition with the MCAS, and I wish that I could simply say that all education simply has to do with MCAS and making sure that students can demonstrate